The sky over Valoria was calm, but Jonas Cade knew better than to trust calm in space. Humanity's cargo ship had been carrying supplies for a small colony on this alien world, and routine missions often turned deadly. Suddenly, alarms screamed in the cabin. Red lights flickered as the ship shuddered violently. Jonas gripped the console, his knuckles white, heart pounding. He had flown through storms, meteor fields, and pirate attacks, but nothing prepared him for the sensation of falling through an alien sky. Metal groaned and sparks danced around the cabin as the ship twisted out of control. He ran toward the sound of distress, small cries piercing through the roar of failing engines. His eyes caught a glimpse of her first, a tiny, fragile figure pressed against the broken wall of the cargo hold. Violet eyes wide with fear stared at him. She was a child, injured, alone. Blood streaked her pale blue skin and her tiny body trembled. Jonas dropped to his knees, scooping her up. The warmth of her fragile body pressed against him, and the fear in her eyes made his chest tighten. "It's okay. I've got you," he whispered, unsure if she understood his words. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, and every second counted. Then he saw her mother, slumped against the metal hull, a vision of elegance now twisted by pain and shock. The faint glow of her skin marked her as someone important. Not just important, royal. Jonas didn't know her name, but instinct told him she was no ordinary alien. She was a princess, and if he didn't act fast, both mother and child could die in the wreckage. The heat of fires and the smell of smoke filled his lungs as he carried both through the twisting corridors. Metal threatened to crush him. Sparks danced dangerously close, but he didn't stop. He focused only on survival, his own, hers, theirs. Humanity had trained him for impossible missions, but nothing had prepared him for carrying a princess's child to safety while the world around him fell apart. Finally, he found a clearing outside the broken hull. The alien forest stretched out like a calm, glowing ocean, trees lit by bioluminescent leaves. Jonas laid the child gently on the soft grass, checking her wounds. She whimpered but was alive, her eyes locking onto his for a brief moment, full of unspoken trust. Her mother crawled forward, leaning on him with trembling hands. Jonas looked into her eyes and saw a mix of gratitude, fear, and a flicker of hope. No words were needed. She nodded at him, almost reverently, as if acknowledging the unspoken bond that had already formed. Jonas stayed awake that night, keeping the child warm and quiet, listening to the alien sounds of the forest. Every rustle in the glowing foliage made him tense, ready to defend them at any cost. His training, his instincts, every lesson humanity had taught him, fused into a singular purpose: protect them no matter what. As he held the child close, Jonas realized something profound. This mission, this world, was more than a job now. It was about life, survival, and the fragile threads of trust and hope. A human, a stranger, could carry the fate of an alien princess and her child in his arms, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to change everything. The night passed slowly, each sound amplified in the alien silence. Jonas whispered promises to a child who barely understood words, promises to protect, to never leave, to survive. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the stirrings of something he had never known before. Responsibility not as a duty, but as a bond that could not be broken. By dawn, the first light of Valoria's twin suns filtered through the glowing trees. Jonas looked down at the child, still asleep, fragile but breathing. He straightened, determination hardening in his chest. The crash had ended, but the journey, his journey, was only just beginning. He would carry her no matter the cost. And in doing so, he would carry hope itself. The morning sun of Valoria cast a soft blue glow over the forest. Jonas Cade had not slept much. Every snap of a branch, every rustle of leaves made him tense. Yet when he looked at the child, Leora, asleep and safe in his arms, a strange calm washed over him. Despite the wreck, the fear, and the uncertainty, there was hope in her small rising chest. Solara, the princess, moved cautiously toward him. Her steps were light but deliberate, her eyes never leaving Leora. She was regal even in exhaustion, her violet-tinted skin glowing faintly in the morning light. Jonas noticed how fragile she seemed, and yet how strong. She had survived the crash, her people, and now this uncertain world. Jonas realized then that strength came in many forms. Not just the ability to fight, but the courage to keep moving, to protect, to trust. "Thank you," Solara said quietly. Her voice was soft, melodic, but carried weight. You saved her. Jonas shook his head. I didn't do anything special. I just carried her to safety. That's all any human would do. Solara's eyes narrowed slightly, a hint of a smile forming. No, you did more. You did not hesitate. You risked yourself, and now she looks to you for comfort. She crouched beside Leora, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You are her protector. The word struck Jonas like a bolt of lightning. Protector. Not a title he had trained for, not a role he had chosen, but a bond he could not refuse. He glanced down at the small child, her eyes opening slowly, blinking at him. Leora reached for his hand without hesitation. Jonas gripped it gently, feeling the warmth and fragility of life in his grasp. Days passed in careful routine. Jonas learned the rhythm of the forest, the safe paths, the alien herbs, the streams where water was clean. He learned the small joys of Leora's personality, her quiet giggle when a firefly landed on her hand, her curiosity about the glowing trees, and the fierce loyalty she displayed toward her mother. Jonas carried her when her legs were too weak, read to her from a small translated device, and became the steady presence she clung to amid the chaos. Solara observed him silently at first, then began to speak to him in short conversations. They did not share a common language easily, but over time, gestures and tone built understanding. Jonas realized that words were not always necessary for trust. Actions spoke louder. Every day he protected her child, ensured her safety, and navigated dangers she could not see. Every day the bond deepened. One evening, under the soft glow of Valoria's twin moons, Solara approached him. You carry what no one else could, she said. Her eyes glimmered with something Jonas could not name. Pride, admiration, maybe even hope. You do not see it, but you are more than a protector. You are family now. Jonas felt the weight of those words. He was not used to being praised. In humanity's wars, soldiers carried out missions, followed orders, and survived. But here, on an alien world, with a child who smiled at him with trust and a mother who looked at him with gratitude, he understood a deeper purpose. Protection was not just survival. It was connection. It was responsibility. It was love, quiet and unwavering, that gave life meaning. The forest around them seemed to breathe with them, alive with alien life, yet serene in a way that eased some of Jonas's tension. Nights were no longer filled only with fear, but with laughter and small victories. Keeping Leora safe, finding food, discovering medicinal plants, and sharing quiet moments with Solara, Jonas began to feel something he had not allowed himself in years. Belonging. Humanity had taught him resilience, endurance, and strength, but Valoria taught him tenderness, loyalty, and courage of the heart. He carried not only the child in his arms, but the weight of hope for her mother, and perhaps for a fragile world that had no one else to stand for it. By the end of the week, Jonas realized something profound. The crash had been catastrophic, terrifying, and painful, but it had also created something extraordinary. A bond between human and alien, between protector and the protected, that transcended fear, language, and even worlds. He looked at Leora sleeping peacefully, her small hand curling around his finger, and Solara watching him with quiet admiration, and he knew with certainty he would carry them through anything, no matter the cost. And in that knowledge, Jonas found his purpose. The forest of Valoria was alive with quiet sounds, leaves rustling, insects humming, and the faint glow of bioluminescent plants painting shadows on the ground. Jonas Cade moved carefully, Leora nestled in his arms, Solara walking beside him. He had grown used to the alien world's rhythms, but danger had a way of finding even the calmest places. He sensed it before he saw it, a subtle shift in the air, a whisper of movement among the glowing trees. His instincts, honed by years of survival on human battlefields, screamed at him to prepare. Jonas shifted Leora so she was shielded against his chest and scanned the forest. Something or someone was out there. Solara stopped beside him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Her violet eyes mirrored the worry he felt. What is it? She asked quietly. Raiders, Jonas said, his voice low. They may have tracked the crash. Valoria isn't safe yet. The words barely left his lips when movement erupted in the shadows. Shapes darted between the trees. Tall, armored figures carrying unfamiliar weapons. They were human enough in appearance to understand their intentions, yet alien in design, sleek and deadly. Jonas's heart tightened. They weren't here for trade. They were here for blood and ransom. Jonas crouched slightly, keeping Leora close. "Stay behind me," he instructed Solara, though she didn't hesitate to stand beside him. Even in danger, she radiated strength. But Jonas knew the child's life was fragile. Every second. He counted. The first volley of energy blasts cut through the trees, sparks scattering like deadly fireflies. Jonas rolled to the side, keeping Leora safe in his arms. He returned fire with a salvage sidearm, each shot aimed to stop rather than kill, to defend rather than attack recklessly. Solara unsheathed her blade, a shimmering curved weapon that hummed with energy. Her movements were swift, elegant, and deadly. Jonas had fought many battles in his life, but nothing compared to fighting beside someone who was both fragile and fierce, who moved like a predator yet fought for love and life rather than hatred. The raiders advanced, thinking they could overwhelm. But Jonas did not falter. He was not just a soldier, he was a protector. Every movement, every decision was calculated to keep Leora safe. He ducked, rolled, and guided Solara when she needed a hand, each action flowing seamlessly with her own strikes. Together they were a storm, a mix of human determination and alien skill that the attackers did not expect. Leora whimpered, but did not cry, trusting Jonas's arms. Her small presence reminded him of why he fought. Not for glory, not for orders, not for survival alone, but for life itself, for the fragile bond that had been placed in his hands. He would not fail. The fight dragged on, energy blasts lighting up the alien night, sparks showering the forest. Jonas could see the attackers faltering, confusion spreading among them. One human had stood in their way. One human had carried a child through chaos and returned with courage that no alien weapon could break. By the time the first light of Valoria's twin suns filtered through the trees, the raiders had retreated. Smoke rose from smoldering undergrowth, the air thick with tension and heat. But Jonas was alive, breathing heavily, Leora still clinging to him. Solara knelt beside them, her hands brushing soot from the child's face, eyes glimmering with gratitude and awe. "You survived," she whispered, voice trembling. "You protected her. You are more than a warrior, Jonas Cade. You are her protector, and now you are ours." Jonas looked down at Leora, small and fragile but alive, her violet eyes trusting him completely. In that moment, he realized that humanity's strength was not in weapons or technology. It was in the ability to care, to endure, and to face impossible odds without surrendering hope. The forest was quiet now, but Jonas knew this was only the beginning. Danger would return, as it always did, but he had proven something crucial. One human, one heart committed to protection could change the course of a life and perhaps an entire world. He tightened his hold on Leora, glanced at Solara, and made a silent vow. He would protect them. Always. No matter what came next. The days after the raid passed slowly, but they were filled with purpose. Jonas Cade moved through the alien forest with ease now, Leora walking beside him when she could, her small hand occasionally slipping into his. Solara followed closely, her presence calm yet alert, a reminder that even royalty could carry both strength and fear. The trio had found a fragile rhythm, a life stitched together from survival, trust and shared determination. Jonas spent hours observing the forest, learning where danger might lurk, which plants could heal wounds, and which paths could be used to travel unseen. Leora loved these excursions, her small feet running ahead, curiosity lighting her eyes. She would point to a glowing flower, ask questions in her soft alien tongue, and Jonas would answer as best he could with gestures, translations, or the few words he had learned. Each day they became more than protector and charges. They became a family bound by circumstance and heart. But peace, Jonas knew, was fragile. Intelligence gathered from scouts brought troubling news. Another raiding force was heading toward their position, larger, faster, and more determined than the first. These were no simple scavengers. They were professional killers, mercenaries who would not stop until the child of Valoria's princess was in their hands. Solara gathered her council, and Jonas was invited to join, not as a guest but as a strategist. He listened to their plans, offered human tactics he had used in war, ambushes, decoy movements, improvised traps. At first, the Valorian warriors were skeptical. How could a fragile human know more about defense than their trained soldiers? But Jonas spoke with quiet confidence, drawing on experiences that spanned countless conflicts. "We fight not because we are stronger," he said, "but because she deserves the chance to survive. Because we refuse to fail." Solara's eyes softened. "He speaks not as a soldier but as a father," she said quietly. Her words were not lost on Jonas. He did not have a family in the traditional sense, but in this alien world, he had found one worth every risk. Training began at dawn. Jonas worked alongside the Valorian warriors, teaching small unit tactics, improvisation, and rapid response. The alien soldiers adapted quickly, but Jonas noticed something remarkable. They were not only learning from him, they were inspired by him. His courage, his willingness to face impossible odds to protect a child, ignited something in them that weapons alone could not create. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the glowing forest, Jonas found Solara watching him quietly. "You do not see it, do you?" she said, a faint smile on her lips. "The way you fight, the way you care. It is more than strength. It is hope." Jonas shook his head, uncomfortable with praise. "I am just a human. I only do what must be done." "Then that is why you are extraordinary," Solara replied. "Because your heart is human and your courage, it is boundless." As night fell, Jonas carried Leora into their temporary sanctuary. She had fallen asleep during the day's training exercises, exhaustion softening her small features. Jonas tucked her into a safe nook he had crafted with soft leaves and alien fabrics, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The glow of Valoria's twin moons filtered through the shelter, painting her sleeping face with silver light. Solara knelt beside him, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. "You have earned our trust," she whispered. "Not by words but by deeds, by carrying her through danger, by standing when others would fall. You are not only her protector, you are our hope." Jonas felt a quiet warmth in his chest. Humanity had trained him to survive, to fight, to endure. But Valoria had taught him something else, that trust, loyalty, and courage of heart could create bonds stronger than weapons, stronger than armies, stronger than fear itself. As he sat there, Leora's soft breathing a gentle rhythm against his chest, Jonas made a silent vow. Whatever came next, whatever threats, whatever wars, he would not falter. He would carry them through every trial, every shadow, every danger that sought to harm them, because he was their protector, and in that role, he had found purpose deeper than any mission, greater than any battle. In the alien forest, under the watchful eyes of twin moons, Jonas Cade embraced his destiny, not just a human among stars, but a protector, a guardian, and the heart of a family that spanned worlds. The warning came at dawn. A distant rumble echoed through the forest, too steady to be thunder, too metallic to be natural. Jonas Cade stood on the ridge, his eyes narrowing as he saw faint lights flickering beyond the horizon. Warships. The raiders had returned, and this time, they were not small in number. Solara joined him, her face pale but determined. "They come for her," she said, glancing back toward the hidden camp where Leora slept. "They want to take my daughter, and destroy what remains of my people." Jonas's jaw tightened. "Then we make our stand here." The Valorian warriors moved quickly, following the plans Jonas had drilled into them. Traps were set, positions reinforced, and weapons distributed. Jonas walked among them, offering calm words, checking defenses, and making sure everyone was ready. His human instincts told him this would be the hardest fight of their lives. Yet he felt no fear, only purpose. Leora was hidden deep in a cave, surrounded by guards sworn to protect her. Before being taken there, she had hugged Jonas tightly, her small voice trembling. "You'll come back?" she asked. Jonas smiled softly and brushed her hair back. "I always come back, little one. That's what protectors do." When the first blast hit the forest floor, the world erupted into chaos. Trees exploded in showers of glowing sap. The ground shook and the air filled with fire. The raiders advanced, black armored soldiers firing energy weapons that lit up the sky. Jonas moved like a force of nature, commanding, shooting, directing the Valorians with calm precision. Solara fought beside him, her curved blade glowing fiercely. The princess who once knew only peace now fought like a storm, her eyes blazing with courage. Jonas admired her strength, her refusal to yield even when the odds were impossible. Together they were more than human and alien. They were two souls bound by the same promise: protect Leora. The battle raged for hours. Jonas took hit after hit, his armor scorched, his body bleeding from shrapnel and burns. But he did not stop. Every time he stumbled, he thought of Leora's small hand in his, her innocent eyes filled with trust. That image gave him strength far beyond pain. At one point, the line began to break. The raiders pushed forward, firing relentlessly. Jonas shouted orders, rallying the Valorians to hold the flank. When a massive blast threw him backward, Solara was there, grabbing his arm and pulling him to safety. "You can't die here," she shouted. He grinned through the blood. Not planning to. Then he lifted his rifle again, eyes blazing with the fire of humanity's will to fight. The Valorians followed his lead. They moved like shadows, striking fast, vanishing, hitting again. Jonas had taught them well. What they lacked in numbers, they made up for in strategy and courage. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The raiders, shocked by the ferocity of their resistance, started to falter. By the time the suns dipped low in the sky, the battlefield was a graveyard of smoking metal and shattered armor. The raiders' ships burned in the distance, their retreating engines fading into silence. The Valorians had survived. Jonas stood among the wreckage, his breathing heavy, body aching. The forest was scarred, blackened by fire, but still alive, just like them. Leora ran to him, crying his name, her tiny arms wrapping around his waist. He fell to one knee, holding her tightly, his heart swelling with relief. Solara approached, her armor cracked, her face streaked with dirt and blood. Yet her eyes shone with pride. "You did it," she said softly. "You saved her. You saved us all." Jonas shook his head slowly. "We did it. Together." For a long moment they stood there. The human soldier, the alien princess, and the child who had brought them together. Around them, the Valorian warriors bowed their heads in respect. To them, Jonas Cade was not just a human anymore. He was a legend. As night fell over the quiet battlefield, Solara placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Protect her. You carry more than her life. You carry our hope." Jonas looked at the child in his arms and the princess standing beside him, and for the first time in his life, he felt something beyond victory. He felt belonging. The war was not over, but in that moment he knew that whatever came next, humanity's heart had already changed this world forever. The war was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the battle itself. The air still smelled of burnt metal and smoke. Trees that once glowed with gentle light now stood scarred and blackened. Jonas Cade walked slowly through the wreckage, his steps unsteady, his body aching with every breath. But he was alive, and so were the people he had fought to protect. Leora spotted him first. She ran through the clearing, her small feet splashing through puddles left by the rain. "Jonas!" she cried, her voice bright and full of relief. He knelt down as she threw herself into his arms, wrapping her arms around his neck. For the first time in days, Jonas smiled. A real, tired but peaceful smile. "You're safe," he whispered. "That's all that matters." Solara approached behind her daughter, her royal robes tattered and her hair dusted with ash. Yet her presence still carried quiet power. The warriors of Valoria followed her, their armor dented but their eyes shining with pride. They gathered around Jonas, forming a circle of respect. Solara raised her voice so all could hear. "Jonas Cade," she said softly, her tone both proud and emotional. "When the sky burned and hope was lost, you carried my child through fire. You led my people when I could not. You fought with courage that even the stars would honor. For this, Valoria names you Protector of Leora and Defender of our world." The words echoed across the clearing. Jonas felt the weight of them settle in his chest. He wasn't used to being praised, and he didn't fight for titles. He had done what his heart demanded, protect those who needed him. But seeing the way Solara looked at him with tears glistening in her alien eyes, he realized this title was more than a name. It was trust. It was love. The Valorian warriors bowed deeply, something they did only for their highest leaders. Leora stood proudly beside him, holding his hand, her eyes bright. "You're my protector," she said softly, smiling up at him. "Always." Jonas knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Always," he promised, "as long as I'm breathing." Days passed and Valoria began to heal. The fires were put out, the wounded treated, and the ruins rebuilt. Jonas helped wherever he could, lifting beams, clearing debris, teaching the soldiers what he knew about human engineering. The people no longer looked at him as an outsider. Children smiled when he passed, warriors saluted him, and elders spoke of him as a living legend, the human who carried light through darkness. But even amid the rebuilding, Jonas sometimes sat alone, staring at the stars. He thought of Earth, his old home so far away. Humanity had been his world once, but now it felt distant, like a story from another life. Here, among aliens, he had found something he never expected: peace, belonging, and purpose. Solara often joined him in those quiet moments. She would sit beside him, both of them watching the twin suns set beyond the glowing hills. "You changed us," she said one evening. "Before you came, we believed strength was measured by power. But you showed us that true strength is the heart that protects even when it bleeds." Jonas looked at her, her face lit by the golden light of sunset. "You and Leora gave me something worth protecting," he said quietly. "That's all I needed." For a long time, neither spoke. The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying with it the soft hum of life returning to the land. That night, the Valorians held a ceremony in the Great Hall, rebuilt and glowing once again with blue crystal lights. Jonas stood beside Solara and Leora as the people chanted his name, their voices rising like music through the air. The sound filled him with warmth, not pride, but deep, humble gratitude. As Leora slipped her small hand into his and looked up with a smile, Jonas realized something simple but powerful. He was no longer a soldier without a home. He was a protector, a guardian of hope and part of something greater than himself. And for the first time in a long, wandering life, Jonas Cade felt truly at peace. Years passed quietly on Valoria. The forest had grown green again, their glowing leaves swaying gently under twin moons. The cities that were once ruins now shimmered with life. And among those who walked the rebuilt streets, one name was spoken with deep respect: Jonas Cade, the Protector. He had stayed. Even when Earth sent signals calling him home, Jonas had chosen to remain. Valoria had become his world, its people, his family. The child he once carried through fire had grown into a young woman, Leora, daughter of Princess Solara, heir to Valoria's throne. But to Jonas she was still the small girl who had held his hand and whispered, "You're my protector." Now she stood tall beside him, her royal robes glowing faintly in the light of the setting suns. "You taught me everything," she said softly. "To lead not with fear but with heart. To protect, not to rule." Jonas smiled, his face lined by time and battles long past. "You were always strong, Leora. You just needed to see it." He looked around the courtyard where children played, laughter echoing through the air. The peace he had once dreamed of was finally real. Yet somewhere deep inside, Jonas felt the quiet pull of age. His body was slower now, his once steady hands trembling slightly. He knew his time was fading, but he felt no fear. He had lived with purpose. That evening, the people gathered in the central square for the Festival of Dawn, a celebration of peace, of the day Valoria had been saved. Lanterns floated into the sky, glowing like tiny stars. Leora stood before the crowd, her voice strong and full of warmth. "Many years ago," she began, "a man came from the stars. He carried me when I could not walk, fought for us when we could not fight, and showed us that courage has no species. His name is Jonas Cade, the Protector. Tonight we honor him." The crowd cheered, their voices rising like thunder. Jonas stood in the front row, humbled, his heart heavy with quiet pride. Leora stepped down from the stage and took his hand, guiding him up beside her. He faced the people, his eyes misty with emotion. "You don't owe me thanks," he said softly. "All I did was protect what mattered. You all did the rest." Solara, older now but still regal, placed a golden insignia around his neck, a symbol of eternal honor. "This is the seal of guardianship," she said. "From this day forward, your name will be written in our history, not as a visitor, but as one of us." Jonas bowed his head, his throat tight. For the first time, he felt completely home. That night, as the celebration ended, Jonas sat beneath the glowing trees, listening to the soft songs of Valorian winds. Leora joined him, resting her head gently against his arm. "Will you ever go back to Earth?" she asked quietly. Jonas looked up at the twin moons. "Earth will always be a part of me," he said. "But my home? It's here now." Silence fell between them, peaceful and warm. The stars reflected in his tired eyes, and for a moment Jonas thought of all the battles, the pain, and the loneliness that had once filled his life. All of it had led him here, to this moment of peace, to this child he had saved, to this world that had saved him in return. Years later, when Jonas Cade finally closed his eyes for the last time, Valoria wept. The bells of every city rang in unison, and the skies were filled with floating lanterns that carried his light upward to the stars. In the grand hall, a statue was built, Jonas standing tall, a child in his arms, his eyes looking toward the horizon. The plaque beneath it read, "He came from the stars not as a conqueror but as a protector. He carried our future through fire and gave us peace." Humanity's heart beats forever in Valoria, and so the legend of the human who carried an alien child became more than a story. It became a promise that no matter how far apart the stars were, compassion, courage, and love would always find a way to unite worlds. Under the glow of twin moons, the Protector's legacy lived on, eternal, unbroken, and full of light.